All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do a quick lab exercise just working with angle and intensity. And I'm going to assign you to a different workstation, and we're going to, using fabrics of different densities. And you are going to be given an objective to, using different angles and different intensities, create this objective, and then everybody will stop, and then we'll look at everybody's work and talk about it.
Also, when cities getting that together, you're actually coming into an era from an architectural point of view with LED lighting, because a lot of new fixtures, especially replacement fixtures for fluorescents, are now coming in dual color temperatures. So you get 2700 Kelvin, which is your nice incandescent, and maybe a 4000 or 5000, which is getting closer to daylight, and put that on a control system where you can control the intensities of both. You can mix and match. So depending on your color scheme, the room you painted or created for the design of the walls, the furniture, all of that, you can sit there. Or if the person 5 years down the road decides to, oh, I want to change my whole office scheme and repaint it, a few tweaks of those intensities can still make that room look or that office look fabulous.
Okay, so for the assignment, what we've got here are different fabrics of different densities. So some of the fabrics might appear very translucent, while others are going to appear more opaque. And so I want you to explore the different angles and see how it changes how these fabric pieces look. And each of you has an objective, each group has an objective that you're trying to create, where you might need to try to make the opaque fabric look translucent and the translucent fabric look opaque, or to really contrast the density of fabric. In all cases, I want you to create something that looks very visually interesting and three-dimensional. Now, you can decide how you want us to view it. So while you are looking at the angles, you can decide an orientation of this is the front or the back, so that we will stand wherever you intend for us to look at the fabrics. Because it would look very different if we went to the back from the front, okay? Jeff is our board operator over here, so we're gonna bring up each angle, the same angle in each group, and we're just gonna run through the lights so you can see what it looks like, and then you can tell Jeff what light you wanna bring up at what intensity. All right, so let's start with the first light.
Number 1.
So this will be 1, number 2. So you'll see that it's just going around in a circle from different angles. And some of them are soft wash fixtures, and some of those are those hard edge lights. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. Number 6. Number 7. Number 8. And number 9. Okay, any questions? Okay, so you're up, you're free to work with any angles, talk together as a group. And then we'll, in a half-hour, stop and take a look at what you've done. And be sure and write down the channel and the intensity, because we may want to take everything out, or we may just leave it up, but just to be sure, write down what your intensity is with the light. See how you're seeing the actual thread pattern of the weave? Whereas when that light isn't backlighting it, like if we look over from this direction, well, we're seeing the whole texture of the fabric, so that's actually revealing all of that weave and texture.
Yeah, we're not seeing through the weave.
Right. So, yeah, so it's a question of changing the light from the front to the back and what that does with each of the pieces of the fabrics.
You have an iris, okay, makes a spark. Shutters, cut on it, opposite. This is this side, this is this side, that's the top, that's the bottom.
Okay.
You have a
Can we
reflector.
get 47 and 20?
it's not hot, just don't grab it around here.
47
That's
is
what
now
you
at
can tip
20.
it up, do what you need to, go straight up, whatever. Just keep it away from the material. Just don't have this, not that you're gonna hit it. But play with it, try what it does inside, put it off to the sides,
33 is
whatever.
now at
But when you tip it, just hold it top, so it doesn't go bang.
All right, 2 more minutes, and then we're going to look at each project.
Either turn that down a little bit or
Are you 45 and 25? 45 and what?
You know, sometimes certain angles, it may not be entirely attractive because you may be seeing more of the wrinkles, or there may be something about it that's coming through in a way that's not as attractive.
39 is now at 0.
33, 50, 32, and 30.
And you're also seeing
Now at
layers,
50,
like with that pink fabric, to
32,
the light and
at
shadow
30.
and the highlights and the folds and
Okay.
everything looks different,
It's
so
now
you're
at
creating more of a
30,
depth contrast.
Yeah, it's 21 and 20.
All right, everybody, let's all gather around group 1 over here. And for those of you in group 1, where do you want us standing? Right here? Okay. And can we get the rest of the studio lights out? Thank you. All right, so people who are in group 1, tell us what your design objective was, and tell us a little bit about why you chose the angles you did.
We had transparency, so making the opaque and transparent.
All right, so we were trying to, with the different densities, make the opaque fabrics look opaque, contrasted with the translucent fabrics looking translucent. And also making it a visually interesting composition. Okay, so tell us about what discoveries you made with angles, and if this is our viewpoint, we have a sort of, depending on how we're looking at this, we have like a side light and a diagonal back, and we have a diagonal front. And we also have the floor light and uplight position. So tell us about what those different angles were doing to the different fabric pieces.
So for the channel 4, basically we're trying to make the opaque fabric opaque and having this transparent, that's like casting the shadow of the pattern on this transparent
So you're
fabric.
using this light here to do that?
Exactly.
All right, so this diagonal light coming in is lighting this to create this shadow over here
Yes.
and make this look opaque.
Yes.
Okay.
And
The upright is making this really transparent. Yeah, but some light goes over there and goes up.
Right, so first of all, we're trying to see all of the fabrics as a kind of sculpture. And a few things are happening in terms of what we're seeing, is besides seeing the opaqueness of fabrics contrasted by fabrics that are more translucent, we're also seeing kind of layers happening. Like we can actually see through this surface into this surface, into this surface, into this surface. So there's a lot more depth that's happening with that piece of fabric. And now and we're also getting highlights and shadows from the folds. I want everybody to walk to the opposite side and see what happens in contrast. Is it more interesting from this side or less interesting? Or maybe it's not, that's kind of saying whether it's good or not good. What's different about it from this side?
looks flat.
Looks flatter?
I think it is.
Okay, so part of that is the arrangement of the fabrics to the light sources. So we've lost a little bit of the depth of the layering from there. And while the one thing that is different, and I'm not sure how well you see this with your eye, is because the light is coming from this side going through, do you see, like this opaque fabric is almost looking a bit translucent. Can everybody see that? It's like making the fabric glow, and you're seeing this individual thread and weave of the fabric, whereas here, that source is flattening this out, and the light behind it is giving it, a kind of lighter area quality. Can people distinguish between the two parts of this fabric in terms of what it's doing and this glowing? So for this particular fabric, maybe backlighting it in a way does something that's different from the front light. And then if we walk back onto this side now, their intended viewpoint, like everybody stand from this, because I think we get slightly different viewpoints of the fabric in terms of the density and the opaqueness as the different angles are working. The top piece of fabric from here and from around here has a wonderful glowing quality to it with that backlight. See how it's creating a denser color? We see that even a redder, warmer color, and then we're getting that contrast of shadow, and then we're getting this paler pink. So just using angles at different intensities now is creating a whole range of color to that one piece of fabric that has not changed color. So there's a lot of really interesting things going on besides the depth of layering and contrast and highlight and shadow. So good job, everybody. Looks good. Excellent. Let's move on to group 2. Where's group 2? Over here. And where would you like everybody to stand?
Back one last year.
All right, so what group 2 was supposed to do is work with the opposite of the texture of fabric. So they were trying to make the opaque fabrics seem translucent, and the translucent fabrics seem opaque. And they were trying to do that with the different angles of light. Okay, so group 2, somebody from group 2, tell us why you chose these angles and what they were doing for the materials. Who's in group 2?
Great. So I think we had a little bit of trouble with the density of the opaque fabrics, so we really had to light it with a lot of intense light. But when you're looking at it from the back, it shows the fibers, it shows, at least it lightens it up and it brightens it up so you actually can start to see through it or just at least see the structure of it. And then doing that, we tried to, I guess, graze a lot of the transparent fabrics so you get more looking at the light rather than the texture of the fabric itself.
Right. Okay, now can everybody see the difference? Like if you're looking from this viewpoint in particular, if everybody can come around and kind of squeeze in. Because what I want to show you is the difference between the top part of this fabric and the bottom part of this fabric. And what they were just talking about with the discovery of working with angles is see how that top light is hitting the top part of that fabric. And of course, we're seeing it in its opaque quality. It's very dense. It's got a heaviness to it. But the backlight that's lighting the bottom layer, which is making that fabric glow and kind of transluce, and you can see that it has a different density to it. And you're actually able to, again, see the weave and texture of the thread and the fabric. And so it looks like two completely different pieces of fabric in terms of the contrast of the density of it. Then if we look and go a little bit this side, and everybody look from here, forgetting about what their objective was in terms of density of fabrics, tell me how you respond to this piece emotionally. No right or wrong, we all have different reactions. But looking at this, like let's say that this was some avant-garde sculpture in a museum and you're standing here and you're looking at how the light is hitting the fabrics and the various intensities. What stands out for you when you look at it from this viewpoint versus when we were on the other side? Like come back over here, maybe that'll be a good test. Everybody come here and look at this. Okay, see this? And now come over here. And everybody kind of crowd in. How do you react emotionally from this side, from that side? Looking at, what's the major difference? It's more dramatic, why?
It's the shadows. They're like,
Because of the shadows,
Yeah.
yes.
like outlining forms.
It's really beautiful in terms of the contrast that we're getting just, aside from looking at the materials, but just reacting to the light. When we stand on the opposite side, the fronts of the fabrics are brightly lit, and it's a little bit flat because of that front angle coming in. But it's all fully lit. There's no mystery to it. There's, not a lot of drama to it. And then we stand here, and what actually stands out is there's dramatic shadows everywhere and just pinpoints of highlights. Like what's really nice is you've got this strong highlight in that one piece of fabric. So we've got the light creating highlights, but then there's this dramatic shadow that's there. And then this translucent fabric also has the light coming through and it's got shadow. And then there's a lot of shadow in the top. And then there's a lot of shadow down here. So we react to it, and it's a much more dramatic, moody piece because of the amount of shadow versus the intensity. And yet it still creates really interesting contrast of the fabric materials and how we're seeing the threads or the weight of the fabric versus that. So really interesting.
I also like the fact that using the top light and only catching that first part of the curve, as if your eye goes to there, follows the curve, and then again, shadow takes you to infinity, i.e. disappearing into the sky. So again, directionality, the top light on the bottom part of the curve makes it opaque, but if you look from this side a little bit, it shows the translucency of the material. So it's a mixture of both happening in that curve.
Okay, good. Let's move on to group 3, which is over here, right? Yeah, okay, where do you guys want us to watch from?
From right about here.
Okay.
So, right.
All right, so group 3 was supposed to reveal the texture and three-dimensional properties of all of the fabrics while creating an equal focus. Okay, so let's start off before I let you talk.
Yeah.
Everybody look at this, and do you feel that there is an equal focus to all of the fabrics in this piece? Yes or no? How many people say yes? Majority say yes. Anybody say no? Almost perfect. Can you see what I'm seeing before I tell you? Yeah, the very top piece of that white fabric, which is closest to the hot spot of that light, is slightly brighter than everything else. You did a really great job of creating an equal focus, and I will go along and say that pretty much. But this class is about really fine-tuning your eye and really learning to see meticulous detail. And if the client wanted us to have everything completely balanced, then what we would see is that's creating too much of a hot spot, and we might need to back the light further away or take it down in intensity or do something with it to kind of balance that out. Our eye is always going to go to the brightest spot physiologically, and then, so when you are designing a room, you might create a series of focal points of where you want people walking into a space to see this, and then to see this, and then to see something else, or you may not want there to be any kind of a focal point. Okay, so aside from that, why don't you, in the group, tell us about why you made these choices and what you discovered about the various angles.
Well, we were in trying to highlight the textures. We were working at trying to bring light from this side just to kind of graze these materials here and here to highlight in this one, to highlight their reflectivity a bit. And then a lot of what we were doing was with that, the backlight shining through this yellow fabric to expose its fibers and make that appear translucent in contrast to like the reflective qualities of it right next to it. And then let that kind of dapple through to this very translucent fabric here. And then getting some kind of top light to highlight all the textures in the red piece.
Okay, so what's good about the angles of light, and you've come in from several directions, which is giving it dimensionality. We are seeing the density of these fabrics. These are denser. We are still seeing this kind of see-through gauzy material. This is a little bit gauzy, so we're seeing all of that, and we're seeing it in a pretty good balance of intensity. Now, what I'd like to do is just play around a little bit. Well, first let's walk around and see what it looks like from the opposite side. So from here, we're not really seeing anything dynamic with the weight of these materials. It's more that we're seeing that kind of unlit. So let's walk back to the other side, and I want to do something to see. Jeff, can you take out, let's see, take out this side Lico, the overhead Lico? Okay, so we can see why they use that light, because now that part of the sculpture is kind of dead and dull. So it did, and if we wanted to create a hotspot, we could definitely do that with it. Now, can you take out the two overhead pars?
That would be 58.
We're 30s, 38 and 32.
8. Oh, 30. 32.
Okay, now, how does our perception of this change at all? What did that do? So now, oh, I see we have one more front light on. Let's take, what's this last light that you have up?
31.
Sorry,
What is 31 reading?
right now 31 is at 20%.
Okay, take 31 out and we're gonna bring it back in a minute.
31 at 0?
Yes. Okay, so here, obviously this is all going into shadow, but we can see now with the floor light, seeing a real contrast from that opaque fabric. We're actually now seeing the texture of all of those threads there, lighting it from behind. And with the light kind of glowing, we're really seeing the translucency of that fabric that's over the chair. But we're obviously losing all of this. Now bring that last light back up to 20.
Okay, it's at 31 at 20?
So this is enough for us to see this material. We're still getting some highlights and shadows. And now if we were looking at this, we would say that the hot spot is going to be that light from behind, and we're getting a contrast of densities between opaque and translucent, only it has a different mood than it did from the original cube, which was much more lit and had more angles to it. So again, even though we're just lighting fabric, we can still convey a mood with it by how much shadow we're introducing through the various light sources. Okay, good job, everybody. Let's go to group 4. And where would you like us to stand? All right, so what group 4 was supposed to do is reveal the texture and the three-dimensional qualities to the different fabrics while making one part of the sculpture a primary focus. So whereas the last group were trying to create a balanced focus, now we're looking for one part of the sculpture taking our focus. Okay, so where do you see the brightest focus, people who aren't in the group? Where do you see it? Okay, so that lavender fabric, we're seeing a bright spot there. Is that the brightest spot? Does anybody see another bright spot?
Well, this red tail is quite bright.
Right, so we've got two. We've got, and of course this is blowing in the wind. We've got a hot spot here, and we've got a glowing part here. All right, so we've got 3 fairly bright spots. Which one grabs your attention more? And it could be different for everybody. How many people, raise your hand, think the top lavender is the brightest, grabs your attention the most? Okay, we have some people. How many people think the red fabric is brighter and grabs your attention? Okay, so I think it's going back to a couple of things, is that the density of this color, remember what I was saying about the ends of the spectrum kind of are more interesting and grab our attention. And so this fabric piece is grabbing our attention because what's interesting here with the lighting, see how the very top part of that purple fabric actually looks purple? But now when we get to the tail end of it, it's almost looking like it's a grayed out piece of fabric. So it's a different color. And then we've got this piece of red fabric looks absolutely dynamic for a number of reasons. We've got the really bright source of light here. And then because the light is coming through the red and translucing, we've got this vibrant red quality that looks gorgeous. And then you've got the light, some of the light that's coming from the front. And now it's creating this strong dramatic interest, which is stronger than that top piece of fabric. Does everybody see that in terms of visual interest with the fabric? What else do you see within this, contrast-wise with fabric pieces? Everybody see again the linear weave of that fabric? We're seeing light and shadow and with this lower purple fabric. So there's a lot of density just even looking at this in terms of what feels heavy, what's feeling translucent, and there's also a great deal of shadow. Now let's look from the opposite side and see what that does. What do you think from this side? Remember, no right or wrong, everybody's right.
It's really mysterious because most of the lighting is highlighting what's in back. Everything in the foreground is in shadow.
Yeah, I think from this viewpoint, while it's not the objective that they were working with, I think this is really dynamic looking at from this point of view for a couple of different reasons. One, again, with this piece of fabric with the linear striations on it, we're seeing both densities contrasted at once. So we're seeing the opaqueness of this fabric through this line of light that's making this really dense. And then we're seeing through this fabric because of the shadow, and we're seeing through that fabric to the back fabric. And if you can see through to that back fabric, it's like a crushed velvet. And you actually can see the texture of that red fabric back there. So there's this depth of contrast of the layering that looks really interesting. And then this fabric that looked pretty much the same density from the other side now has this sort of glowing look to it, shadow, stronger shadow. So while this is basically a translucent fabric, we are actually seeing density within that single piece of fabric because of the way the different angles of light are hitting it. And again, this is a more shadowy, maybe more mysterious kind of feeling to it. So it's, you know, all of these materials, and then if you come over here,
This angle is cool.
this angle, you're seeing that crushed red velvet head on. So you're really, and then you're seeing the kind of contrast between where this is folded over. And it's revealing the fabrics in another way. So completely different viewpoint if we change the orientation of the angles and the intensity. And so it's a question of what you want it to look like for the viewer. Because it, you know, we can, so you can make changes. Like for example, you know, maybe it's a restaurant that has a wall that has lovely draped fabric. And you could actually change the mood of that wall throughout the night very slowly, so it's unobtrusive to people eating. But without changing material, you can change the quality of that experience for the people sitting there and make something very dynamic and change the mood from something that's more, romantic or maybe a little bit mysterious to something that's brighter and more overt. And, even looking at it from this viewpoint, looking at all 4 sculptures together, we're getting 4 completely different moods from those pieces.